Blake Lively has long been admired for her style, wit, and seemingly flawless Hollywood track record. Yet everything she's built appears to be teetering on the edge of a catastrophic collapse. For years, she reigned as a trusted voice, someone fans believed was genuine, strong, and undeniably in control. That image is now under siege, thanks to a single magazine cover that tore the curtain off of her carefully managed persona. The Hollywood Reporter's February 22 cover might have looked like an ordinary illustration at first glance, but it set off a chain reaction that no one in Hollywood saw coming. Within days, her PR team was in frantic defense mode, throwing around accusations of sexism and discrimination, hoping to rally the public to her side. Instead, they triggered a tidal wave of criticism, as more people began questioning whether Blake's outrage was genuine or just another strategic performance. Suddenly, controversies that had simmered under the surface sprang into the spotlight. Rumors and speculation about her controlling attitude on set, her relentless quest for creative power, and the questionable legal actions she'd taken against a colleague all came roaring back. Anonymous sources shared troubling anecdotes, revealing the behind-the-scenes tension she had allegedly orchestrated. So how did a beloved Hollywood figure go from adored to almost reviled in the blink of an eye? And can she recover before the fallout buries her for good? The turning point came when The Hollywood Reporter ran a cover story that depicted Blake Lively in what many described as an outlandish, medieval-themed illustration. In the image, she was shown launching a slingshot at Justin Baldoni, a gesture that immediately raised eyebrows. Some called it satire, others dismissed it as a cheap stunt, but the real shock was inside the magazine's pages, where a deeper story about Blake's recent behavior unfolded. From the moment the cover hit social media, Blake's team responded with heated accusations, calling the artwork sexist and an attack on women who speak out. Their stance was bold but felt oddly disproportionate. Onlookers wondered, why blow up over a stylized cartoon? Was there more behind this outrage than just an unflattering illustration? Critics were quick to point out the irony. Blake, who often advocates for women to be strong and unshakable, appeared to be spiraling over a piece of art. People who'd once supported her began voicing doubts, noting that if this controversy overshadowed any real message she wanted to share, perhaps the sexism angle was a convenient distraction. What most didn't realize was that the magazine article itself revealed far more than an unflattering cartoon. It shined a spotlight on tensions simmering beneath the surface of Blake's public image. But that wasn't the only revelation. Because just as the cover made waves, another story took shape, one involving Justin Baldoni's faith, on-set dynamics, and the possibility that this entire conflict was rooted in misunderstanding rather than malicious intent. In a matter of hours, Blake's public relations machine went into overdrive. Press statements circulated, calling the cover dangerous, while insider sources insisted that Blake felt personally targeted. At first, some fans rushed to her defense. After all, she had always presented herself as an advocate for equality and fairness. Yet, as the statements grew more dramatic, people started asking tougher questions. Why was her team leaning so heavily on accusations without supplying actual evidence of harm? Was this a genuine concern about negative stereotypes, or a calculated effort to steer public opinion away from something else, something the article might have revealed? Social media became a battleground. Some users argued that a sexist depiction is never acceptable, regardless of context. Others wondered if Blake's reaction was overshadowing the real content of the article, content that hinted at deeper issues. Several high-profile Twitter accounts pointed out that the cover, though harsh, was overshadowed by more pressing concerns within the piece itself. The more her representatives cried foul, the less sympathy they seemed to garner. Meme culture thrived on the contradiction of a supposedly fearless star suddenly crumbling over a cartoonish depiction. Influencers and commenters noted the dissonance. How could someone known for promoting female empowerment appear so shaken by a satirical illustration? Then came a wave of revelations about the actual text accompanying the cover story, paragraphs that dug into uncomfortable details about Blake's recent conduct. That's when observers began connecting the dots, suspecting that the real meltdown wasn't about a drawing at all. Hidden within the article's paragraphs was a storyline involving Justin Baldoni, known for his strong religious background and open, warm demeanor. The piece suggested that friction arose on set partly because of Baldoni's personal expressions of faith, which some believed were misunderstood in a high-pressure Hollywood environment. According to close associates, Baldoni's gestures, like friendly hugs or moments of prayer, were typical for him. However, these actions clashed with Blake's perception of what was appropriate in a post-Me Too industry. Initially, speculation painted Baldoni as the villain, implying that he'd crossed boundaries or made people uneasy. But the article offered an alternate view. Perhaps the misinterpretation of his beliefs had magnified tensions unnecessarily. Rather than addressing the possibility of a cultural clash, Blake's team doubled down. They continued to cast Baldoni's behavior in the worst possible light, framing it as predatory or intentionally unsettling. This approach made some question whether the goal was to seek understanding or to weaponize discomfort for a bigger narrative. The revelation that religion might have played a role turned public sentiment on its head. Instead of a straightforward story of wrongdoing, the controversy now seemed like a nuanced problem involving faith, personal boundaries, and Hollywood's ever-evolving standards. By brushing aside this cultural component, Blake's camp unintentionally cast doubt on the sincerity of their claims. At the very moment they might have chosen to clarify or show openness, they intensified the attack. Observers started suspecting that the outrage wasn't really about justice, but rather about shielding Blake from a more critical examination of her own actions. Amid the uproar, a new bombshell emerged. Sources close to the situation revealed that crucial text messages were missing from Blake's amended legal complaint. Reports indicated that these texts had originally been part of the lawsuit but mysteriously vanished in the updated filing. Legal experts on TV and social media wondered why any credible claim would omit vital evidence, unless that evidence undermined the story. This revelation fueled intense speculation about what exactly the missing messages contained. Did they show Blake admitting to exaggerating certain details? Did they suggest that Baldoni's behavior was never as sinister as her team portrayed? With no straightforward explanation provided, the missing texts became a glaring red flag. Suddenly, media outlets began dissecting every angle of the lawsuit. Articles questioned the credibility of Blake's claims, while analysts pointed out inconsistencies in her narrative. The idea that her team might have sanitized the legal documents to hide weaknesses sparked serious concern. As public doubt grew, so did the volume of critical voices. People began to see her allegations not as a righteous call for accountability, but as part of a larger campaign to control the conversation. Instead of empathy, she generated suspicion. In the court of public opinion, missing evidence rarely goes unnoticed, and the silence around those texts was deafening. By this point, the question was no longer simply, did Baldoni overstep? It had become, is Blake orchestrating an elaborate cover-up to protect her reputation? What began as widespread support for Blake quickly morphed into open mockery. Memes portraying her as overly dramatic circulated rapidly. Twitter threads dissected every contradictory statement she'd made since the scandal broke, showcasing how her version of events shifted with each new wave of criticism. The internet turned the once serious legal dispute into a kind of spectator sport. People compiled timelines of her claims versus her PR statements, highlighting glaring inconsistencies. They pointed out that Blake once championed authenticity and standing strong, only to now appear thin-skinned and contradictory when challenged. Even fans who once admired her fashion sense and acting prowess questioned her motives. Some posted heartfelt messages expressing disappointment, saying they felt betrayed by a figure they believed stood for honesty. Others took a more sarcastic tone, joking that Blake was going method by playing the role of a meltdown-prone star for publicity. Critics noted how her insistence on painting Baldoni as a one-dimensional antagonist ignored the possibility of nuanced communication issues, overshadowing any real discussion about on-set boundaries. Many concluded that while real harassment claims must be taken seriously, nothing about this scenario seems straightforward. In the era of instantaneous reaction, Blake's strategy to dominate the narrative backfired. Instead of guiding public sympathy, she found herself inundated with skepticism. A single magazine cover might have lit the spark, but her own actions seemed to pour fuel on the flames. As the scandal intensified, more sources emerged to discuss Blake Lively's alleged on-set behavior. According to production staff, she exercised significant control, far beyond what was typical for an actor on a collaborative film project. She reportedly dictated changes in the script, costumes, and even co-stars' lines. Her commands were sometimes so sweeping that they derailed entire shooting schedules, sparking frustration among the crew. This controlling streak extended to any aspect of filming that didn't match her vision. People who initially admired her passion soon found themselves under what felt like an authoritarian regime. Rumors spread that she leveraged her celebrity status to get her way, leaving little room for genuine creativity. Those close to Baldoni suggested that much of the tension could have been avoided if a more open dialogue had existed. Instead, they described a hostile environment where the slightest deviation from Blake's directives was seen as insubordination. These same insiders hinted that her sudden pivot to claims of harassment might be linked to the resistance she encountered when others questioned her tactics. Some crew members recalled moments when cultural expressions, like group prayers or shared spiritual practices, were frowned upon or dismissed. While it's reasonable for an actor to have boundaries, the scale and intensity of Blake's intolerance suggested something else was going on, perhaps an intentional move to solidify her own power by painting others as inappropriate. Those stories, once whispered quietly, became part of a growing narrative. Blake Lively wasn't merely a victim. She was a dominant force, unafraid to push the limits of her influence. And if that was true, it cast her meltdown in a very different light. A key turning point in Blake's allegations revolved around a particular slow dance scene she filmed with Justin Baldoni. She accused him of adding unapproved intimate gestures, an uninvited forehead kiss, a gentle caress, that she claimed were never discussed. But leaked footage told a different story. In the raw video, Blake appeared fully engaged in the scene, leaning in during the exact moments she later described as forced. Some watchers said it looked like a mutual performance, not a one-sided violation. Baldoni's team insisted the scene had always been intended as a tender, emotional moment between two characters. In a bizarre twist, The Hollywood Reporter brought in an expert who claimed these gestures were indicative of serious boundary crossing. The catch? This expert wasn't present during filming and had no direct knowledge of how the scene was scripted. Critics immediately pointed out the flaw in relying on third-hand opinions to confirm wrongdoing. As the debate raged, more individuals from the set chimed in anonymously, suggesting the slow dance was choreographed to convey a blossoming connection. Some hinted that Blake had not only consented, but had been enthusiastic about capturing genuine chemistry on camera. If that was true, then her claims of non-consent clashed directly with reality. This discrepancy made her motives even murkier. Was she genuinely harmed, or was this another tactic to bolster a lawsuit that was losing credibility by the day? The so-called expert statements only fanned suspicions that certain media outlets were more interested in sensational headlines than actual proof. Another shadow looming over this controversy is actress Jenny Slate, rumored to have filed an HR complaint against Justin Baldoni. Some believed her complaint might support Blake's claims, reinforcing the idea of a hostile work environment. Others speculated it was about a separate issue entirely. What's striking is Jenny Slate's public silence. She's made no comments on social media and hasn't clarified what her supposed HR filing contained. Without her input, the rumor remains just that, a rumor. Yet the mere whisper that someone else found Baldoni's actions problematic gave Blake's team a new angle to seize upon, suggesting a pattern of misconduct. Simultaneously, Blake positioned herself as a crusader for feminist issues, clutching onto the broader Me Too narrative. She insisted that her battle was about protecting women in the workplace and exposing wrongdoing. But many feminists and activists felt uneasy about her approach. They argued that unsubstantiated claims could weaken legitimate cases of mistreatment, and that conflating cultural warmth with predatory intent was a slippery slope. By turning to broad social movements for cover, Blake risked trivializing the very real struggles women face. If her accusations were indeed exaggerated or twisted, that would set a damaging precedent, fueling skepticism toward other survivors' stories. This possibility alarmed observers who recognize how critical it is for authentic claims to be believed. As the scandal deepened, the boundaries between personal grievance, genuine harassment concerns, and opportunistic narrative spinning blurred further. Each day brought new headlines that muddied the waters, leaving onlookers wondering where the line between truth and manipulation fell. Blake Lively's reputation has taken a beating on all fronts. She went from a darling of Hollywood, praised for her style, acting chops, and outspoken persona, to a figure mired in controversy that seems partly self-inflicted. The original magazine cover was only the spark. What followed was an avalanche of contradictory claims, rumored power plays, cultural misunderstandings, and missing evidence that painted a far more complex picture than anyone anticipated. Now, she's at a critical juncture. The public eye is focused on every move she makes, every statement she releases. Some believe she's become the architect of her own downfall, employing strategies that hinge on outrage rather than clarity. Others cling to the possibility that there's still more to this story, evidence waiting to be revealed. No matter the truth, the stakes are high. If Blake's accusations are proven baseless or exaggerated, she risks alienating an industry that once embraced her. She also risks discrediting actual victims who depend on the public's willingness to listen. On the other hand, if any genuine wrongdoing emerges, there could be an entirely new wave of fallout, one that forces a reckoning in Hollywood regarding cultural awareness and on-set boundaries. For now, Hollywood watchers are left to ponder the final outcome. Will fresh revelations turn the tide back in Blake's favor, or has she gone too far down a path of sensational claims? Has her attempt to shift focus to feminism and workplace issues helped or hurt real discussions about misconduct? Is Justin Baldoni simply misunderstood, or is there more to his interactions than meets the eye? These questions remain open, casting a cloud of uncertainty over the entire controversy. One thing, however, is crystal clear. This saga is far from over. Each passing day pulls back another layer, revealing what might be the true nature of Blake Lively's meltdown and the shifting power dynamics at play. The next chapters in this unfolding story could reshape how audiences view both her and the Hollywood machine that once propped her up as a beloved star. Ultimately, the only real certainty is that the public and the industry will be watching every twist and turn. In a time when transparency matters more than ever, any misstep could cost Blake Lively the goodwill she's spent years cultivating. Whether this ends in redemption or a permanent stain on her career remains to be seen, but the verdict will be carried out in the court of public opinion. No matter what happens next, one question lingers. Can Blake Lively reconcile the persona she once projected with the harsh spotlight now trained on her every move? Perhaps the answers will come sooner rather than later, but for now, her reputation teeters on the brink, leaving viewers to wonder if this entire saga is the beginning of her downfall or just a dramatic prelude to a comeback no one expects.